My stepbrother and his fiancée demanded my inheritance for their wedding. When my parents took their side, I ended up exposing a dark family secret. I'm Mia, 27 years old, female, and the oldest child in my family. We're a middle-class bunch, nothing glamorous, but we've always had enough to live comfortably. My parents, Anna and Robert, have run a charming little bakery in our small town for over 2 decades. It's not just a business, it's a cornerstone of the community. Growing up, we weren't wealthy, but we always had what we needed. My parents worked tirelessly, teaching both me and my younger brother, Jake, 25, the value of hard work. But here's the thing, Jake has always been the golden boy. The sun could rise and set in his honor as far as my parents were concerned. If he slacked off in school, it was brushed aside. If he accomplished the bare minimum, it was treated like a triumph. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was obvious to anyone paying attention. Still, I wasn't the type to crave attention or compete for it. I preferred to keep my head down, work toward my own goals, and stay far away from family drama. If Jake needed the spotlight, he could have it. That mindset worked for me, until now. 5 years ago, my granddad passed away. He and I were close, and losing him hit me hard. When his will was read, I learned he had left me a trust fund. Now, this wasn't some lottery-winning fortune, but it was a solid amount. Enough to change my life if I used it wisely. There were strings attached, though. I can't touch the money until I turn 30. And even then, it's only for specific purposes like buying a home or furthering my education. I didn't give it much thought at first. I'm not a reckless spender, and I already had my own plans. Maybe I'd use it to buy a small apartment in the city or finally start my own business. Something I'd been dreaming of for years. Fast forward to earlier this year. Jake got engaged to Emma. She's 26, comes from a wealthy family, and has that polished, magnetic personality that makes her the star of any gathering. I liked her at first. She was fun, charming, and seemed genuinely nice. But that opinion didn't last. One evening at a family dinner, Emma brought up my trust fund out of nowhere. Her tone was light, almost bubbly, but the question caught me completely off guard. She asked what I planned to do with the money when I could finally access it. I mumbled something vague about maybe buying an apartment or starting a business. She smiled, wide, almost too wide, and said, "Wow, that's so lucky. You know, Jake and I could really use some help with our wedding, or maybe even for a down payment on a house." Jake gave this awkward chuckle, like even he wasn't sure if she was being serious. I laughed too, assuming it was a joke, but she didn't laugh. She just looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to agree. It was awkward enough, but then my parents jumped in. They quickly said that the money was mine and not really up for discussion. That seemed to end it for that night. But the topic wasn't dead. In the weeks that followed, Emma kept bringing it up, always with a smile, always in a casual tone, but each time her words were more pointed. "It's so amazing you have that kind of opportunity, Mia. Not many people are in such a great position to help their family." At first, I brushed it off, changed the subject, or gave a polite laugh, but she wouldn't let it go. Jake, who had been silent about it at first, eventually joined in with little comments of his own. "I mean, it's not like you're using the money right now. I get why Emma keeps mentioning it." I tried talking to my parents, hoping they'd step in. Instead, my mom said, "You know, Emma just wants to feel like part of the family. She's not being pushy." I hadn't even used the word pushy, but that's exactly what it was. I felt cornered. The trust fund wasn't accessible yet, and I had clear personal plans for it. But it was becoming obvious this wasn't going away quietly. Then, at another family dinner, Emma decided subtlety wasn't working. She pulled me aside and said, flat out, "Mia, I really think you should reconsider what you're doing with that money. Helping Jake and me would be such a meaningful way to show your support for the family. Don't you think it's selfish to hold on to it when you're not even using it?" I was stunned. No one had ever called me selfish to my face before. I told her calmly that the money wasn't even available yet and that I had plans for it. Her face went cold. "I guess I misunderstood what kind of person you are," she said. The next day, Jake called to apologize. It didn't feel genuine. He excused her behavior as wedding stress, but then added, "She's not wrong though. You could help us." That was the first time I started to wonder if I was the crazy one here. Was I really being selfish? I talked to friends who assured me I wasn't, but it didn't make the tension go away. The situation was getting heavier by the day, and I could see Emma wasn't going to take no for an answer. And Jake, well, he was on her side. My parents were too focused on keeping the peace to actually support me. I had no idea just how far this was about to go. After that confrontation where Emma called me selfish, I started noticing subtle and not so subtle changes in how people treated me. It wasn't as if someone announced that I was now the family villain, but the shift was undeniable. At gatherings, Emma's smiles felt tight, polite, and cold around the edges. Jake, once at least a little warm with me, began keeping his distance. My parents stayed in their peacemaker roles, but even they felt different. And then Emma got bolder. It became her habit to corner me during family events when others weren't paying attention. One evening, while everyone else was in the living room watching TV, she pulled me aside and said, with a smile so sweet it almost felt like mockery, "Mia, I've been thinking, what if you gave us a portion of the trust fund as a wedding gift? It wouldn't have to be the whole thing, just enough to help with the down payment on a house. A wedding gift. Who asked for something like that?" I told her no, again, and explained politely that the trust fund wasn't even accessible yet, and that I had my own plans for it. She stared at me as if I'd just told her I hated puppies. "I thought you cared about your family. Jake and I are starting our life together, and this could make such a big difference for us. It's not like you need the money right now." Her entitlement was unreal. I walked away without saying anything else, but the conversation left me drained. It didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, she got creative with her approach. She reframed the whole thing as if my giving them money would be an investment in the family's future. I couldn't help but laugh, quietly, at how ridiculous that sounded. An investment? Was I supposed to bankroll their life and expect, what, emotional dividends? Jake, meanwhile, was slowly being drawn into her thinking. At first, he didn't openly demand the money, but his comments changed. "Mia, you're in such a good position. You could really make a difference here," he'd say, as if testing my limits. I tried once more to bring it up with my parents, hoping they'd set boundaries. But my mom said something that left me stunned. "Emma just wants to feel like part of the family. And you know, Jake has always had it a little harder than you financially." Harder? We grew up in the same house, went to the same schools, had the same parents. The only difference was that I worked hard, saved, and planned, while Jake didn't. My dad added, "I'm not saying you should do it, Mia, but maybe think about it. Sometimes keeping the peace is more important than being right." So, keeping the peace was now the priority, even if it meant I had to give up my own inheritance. It became clear, this wasn't just about Emma anymore. My parents were enabling her, whether they realized it or not. The final straw, for this phase, came a few weeks later. Jake and Emma invited me to lunch. I thought it might be a casual catch-up. As soon as I sat down, though, I knew it was a trap. After a bit of small talk, Emma leaned forward, voice soft and deliberate. "Mia, we've been thinking, what if you gave us half of the trust fund? That way you'd still have plenty for your own plans, and we could start our life together without all this stress." Half. She actually said half. I told her calmly, for the 100th time, that I didn't have access to the trust fund yet, and even if I did, I had no intention of giving it away. That's when Emma's tone shifted into something sharp. "You're hoarding money that could be used to help the whole family. It's not fair for you to keep it all to yourself." Jake joined in. "I see your point, Mia, but Emma's not wrong. This could really change things for us. You're in such a good position to help." It felt like being tag-teamed in a boxing ring. I left that lunch feeling completely drained. A few days later, my parents called me over for what they called a family meeting. Jake and Emma were already there, looking smug. My parents launched into how they just wanted to resolve the tension and keep the family together. Then my dad said, "Mia, maybe it's time to consider giving them a portion of the trust. It doesn't have to be half, but something to show your support." I couldn't believe it. My own parents were now pressuring me to give up my inheritance to please Emma. I told them no, firmly, and walked out. But things didn't calm down. Emma started telling her version of the story to extended family. Soon I was getting calls and texts from aunts, uncles, even cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all telling me I was being selfish and should do the right thing. I felt like I was losing my mind. No one respected my boundaries, and the pressure was suffocating. I started to think I might need legal action, but the idea of taking that step against my own family made me feel sick. At that point, I didn't realize the storm was only beginning. I didn't think things could get worse, but I was wrong. After that disastrous lunch and the so-called family meeting, I thought maybe, just maybe, the dust would settle if I stayed firm. I'd been crystal clear. The trust fund wasn't even accessible yet, and even when it was, I had no intention of giving any of it away. I was frustrated, yes, but I figured I could just wait it out. Then my parents called me again. My dad's tone was calm. Almost too calm, the kind of tone that instantly makes your gut twist. "Mia, can you come over? We want to have a chat. It's important," he said. I asked point blank if it was about Jake and Emma. My mom's answer, not exactly, didn't fool me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I walked into their house, the first thing I saw was Jake and Emma sitting on the couch like they were at a board meeting, both upright, both wearing tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. My mom gestured for me to sit, and I instantly knew this wasn't a friendly visit. This was an ambush. They started with small talk. My dad asked about work, how I was doing, the usual pleasantries. But it didn't take long for the real agenda to surface. Mia, we've all been feeling a lot of tension lately, my mom began. We just want to find a way to resolve it. I glanced at Jake and Emma. Emma gave me one of her signature tight-lipped smiles, the kind that made my skin crawl. Then my dad spoke. We think it would be best if we could come to some sort of compromise. Compromise? I asked, already annoyed. What exactly are you suggesting? Jake leaned forward, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him. Mia, we know you've got your own plans for the trust fund, and we respect that. But Emma and I are in a really tough spot right now. We're trying to plan our wedding and figure out our future. Honestly, even a little bit of help from you would make such a big difference. Emma jumped in before I could respond. Exactly. It doesn't have to be half, just something to show you support us. It's not just about the money, it's about family. That word again, family. It was starting to feel like a weapon. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. The trust fund isn't even available yet. And even if it were, I have my own plans for it. I'm not giving it away. My dad shifted in his seat. We're not saying you have to give them half or anything drastic, but maybe consider helping them out with a small portion. It could go a long way in easing the tension in the family. I stared at him. So, what? I'm supposed to give them money I don't even have access to yet, just to ease tension. How is that my responsibility? Jake sighed like he was exhausted from dealing with me. It's not just about the money, Mia. It's about showing you care. You're in such a good position right now, and this could really help us start our life together. I looked at Emma, who was sitting there with a smug little expression, as if she'd already won. This isn't fair, I said, my frustration starting to seep through. I've worked hard to plan for my future, and this money is part of that. Why should I have to give it up just because you two decided to get married? Emma's smile disappeared. Her voice went cold. It's not about fairness, Mia. It's about family. Jake and I are trying to build something here, and you have the means to help us. It wouldn't even hurt you to give just a little. My mom's voice softened, but her words were no less frustrating. Mia, I think what Emma's trying to say is that this could be a way to bring the family closer together. Sometimes it's better to compromise than to hold on so tightly to something. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents, who had always claimed to be supportive of me, were now siding with Emma. I'm not holding on to it tightly, I said, my voice rising. I'm following the rules of the trust fund, and I have my own goals for it. Why is that so hard for everyone to understand? There was a long silence. Then Emma spoke again, her tone icy. You know, Mia, I think the real issue here is that you're not willing to put the family first. Jake and I have always supported you, and now that we need help, you're shutting us out. It's really disappointing. That was it. I stood up. I'm not shutting anyone out. I'm just not giving you what you want. And that doesn't make me selfish or a bad sister. It's my money, my decision, and I'm done having this conversation. My dad tried to stop me. Mia, wait, don't leave like this. We just want to find a solution that works for everyone. I turned back. You mean a solution that works for Jake and Emma? Because that's all this meeting was about. If you can't see how unfair this is, I don't know what else to say. And I walked out. Since then, I've barely spoken to my parents. Jake and Emma have completely cut contact, which honestly feels like a relief. But the isolation is crushing. I always thought my family would have my back no matter what. Now it feels like they've all turned against me. And for what? Part of me wants to cut them all off for good. Another part hopes things can somehow go back to normal. For now, I'm just focusing on myself. But it's hard when the people you expect to love you most are the ones causing the pain. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to stop playing defense and start fighting back. After weeks of being cornered, guilt-tripped, and painted as the selfish villain of the family, I finally hit my limit. I hadn't wanted this to turn into an all-out war, but the truth was I couldn't just sit back and hope the storm would pass anymore. The phone calls and texts from relatives kept coming. Some were concerned, others were openly hostile, all of them parroting Emma's talking points. It didn't matter how many times I explained that the trust fund wasn't even accessible yet, or that it had restrictions in place. No one cared about the facts. They only saw a pot of money they thought I should be handing over. The final push came from my cousin Laura, one of the only relatives who had actually supported me through all of this. She called me one evening and told me what she'd been hearing at family gatherings. Apparently, Emma had been going around telling people, "Mia doesn't care about family. It's sad to see someone prioritize money over their own brother." Hearing those words made my blood boil. It wasn't just that she was twisting the truth. It was the way she was deliberately turning people against me, knowing exactly how much family has always meant to me. But Laura didn't stop there. She told me Emma had also been poking around, trying to dig up more details about my financial situation. She was asking relatives questions about my income, my savings, and whether there was any possible loophole to get to the trust fund sooner. That was it. The line had been crossed. I called a local attorney who specialized in estate law. When I told her the whole story, she was stunned, not just by the entitlement, but by the sustained pressure and the rumors spreading. She told me point blank, Emma's behavior could be considered harassment. Then she gave me the best news I'd heard in months. The trust fund was ironclad. No one but me would have access to it when I turned 30, and no one could legally force me to give away a single cent. That was a relief, but it didn't solve the immediate problem. My lawyer advised me to start documenting everything: texts, emails, voicemails, social media posts, even in-person conversations. She also told me that if the harassment didn't stop soon, I should send a cease and desist letter. So I got to work. I went through my phone, saving every incriminating text. Emma's messages dripping with entitlement, Jake's passive-aggressive guilt trips, even my mom's subtle but pointed remarks. All of it went into a folder. It felt surreal, like I was building a legal case against my own family. But I didn't have a choice. Meanwhile, Emma wasn't slowing down. She began posting vague but obviously targeted updates on social media, cryptic lines about selfish relatives and family drama that had her friends rushing to comment with sympathy. She didn't name me, but she didn't need to. People knew. Then came the moment that shook me to my core. One day, a coworker pulled me aside and said, "Hey, just so you know, someone's been calling HR asking about your salary and financial details. They claim to be a family member." I didn't have proof it was Emma, but who else could it be? The timing and context were too perfect, or too sinister, depending on how you looked at it. That night, I called my lawyer again. I told her about the social media posts, the rumors, and now the attempt to pry into my private financial records. She didn't hesitate. It was time to send the cease and desist. The letter was professional, but firm. It laid out every instance of harassment, made it crystal clear that her behavior was unacceptable, and warned that any further actions would result in legal consequences. I felt sick as I signed off on it. This wasn't what I wanted, but Emma hadn't left me with any other options. The letter went out, and just a few days later, my phone lit up with Jake's name. His tone was pure fury. "What the hell, Mia? You sent a legal letter to my fiancé? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for us?" I stayed calm. "Jake, I had no choice. Emma has been harassing me for weeks. She's been spreading lies, trying to dig into my finances, and I've told her no more times than I can count. She crossed the line." He didn't see it that way. "You're overreacting. She's just trying to make you understand her side. This is about family, not money." I shot back. "If it's about family, then why is she going behind my back, spreading rumors, and trying to access my private information? That's not what family does." The call ended with Jake saying he needed time to cool off. Things went quiet after that, at least on the surface. Emma stopped posting on social media, and I didn't hear from her directly. But my parents were livid with me for involving a lawyer. My mom called and said, "You didn't need to make this a legal matter, Mia. You could have just talked to us." I reminded her that I had talked to them multiple times, and they'd done nothing. That didn't change her mind. For now, I was focused on one thing: protecting myself. I had every message, every post, every comment saved. My lawyer was ready to act if Emma tried anything else. It wasn't the ending I wanted, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had some control again. I just didn't realize that control was about to shatter in the most unexpected way possible. The cease and desist letter did what it was supposed to, at least at first. Emma went quiet. The vague, passive-aggressive posts about selfish relatives stopped. For a few days, I actually let myself believe the storm might be calming down. But peace wasn't in the cards. My parents and Jake kept the tension alive. It started with a call from my mom, her voice sharp and exasperated. "Mia, do you have any idea how much damage that letter caused? Emma's humiliated. Now the whole family thinks we're falling apart." I took a breath, already tired. "Mom, Emma has been harassing me for weeks. She's turned relatives against me, dug into my financial situation, and refused to take no for an answer. What else was I supposed to do? Her answer: "You could have handled it better, sending legal letters to family. That's not how we solve problems." I hung up, realizing for the 100th time that my parents weren't going to see my side no matter how much proof I had. In their eyes, the real problem wasn't Emma's behavior. It was that I'd fought back. Then, just a few days later, everything exploded. Jake accidentally sent a text meant for Emma to the entire family group chat. And when I say entire, I mean me, our parents, and a couple of cousins, including Laura. The first message from Jake to Emma read, "I found the messages you sent to your friends about Mia and the trust fund. Are you serious? You've been bragging about securing the bag this whole time?" Attached were screenshots. In one, Emma had written to a friend, "Don't worry, Robert and Anna will push Mia into giving me the money. She's too soft to hold out forever." Another message had her mocking me directly. "Mia is so focused on her little business dreams that she doesn't even realize how selfish she's being. This money should have been split between the family from the start." Then came Jake's follow-up to Emma. "I can't believe you've been manipulating everyone, including me, just to get your hands on money that isn't yours. This stops now." The group chat went dead silent. Seconds later, Jake realized his mistake. His next message: "Oh no, this wasn't supposed to go here. I'm so sorry." But it was too late. The damage was done. My mom was the first to respond. "Emma, what is this? Is this true?" My dad followed right after. "Emma, you told us you were trying to work things out peacefully. Were you lying to us this whole time?" Emma tried to backpedal, firing off a quick reply. "These are being taken completely out of context. I was venting to friends about how stressful everything has been with the wedding. You've all misunderstood." But this time, no one seemed to buy it. The screenshots were too specific, too calculated. Jake stayed silent in the chat after his accidental confession. Later that evening, he called me. His voice was shaky. "Mia, I'm so sorry. I was going to confront Emma privately, but I accidentally sent those messages to everyone. I didn't mean for you to find out like this." My frustration was barely contained. "Jake, why didn't you say something sooner? You've been defending her for months while she's been doing this behind everyone's back." He admitted, "I didn't know how bad it was until recently. I found those messages on her phone by accident. I couldn't believe it. I was trying to figure out how to confront her without blowing everything up. But clearly I failed." His voice cracked. "I let her manipulate me, Mia. I thought she was just pushing for what was best for us. But now I see how far she's taken it. I'm so sorry for everything." I sighed. "Jake, I've been trying to tell you this for months. Emma didn't care about the family. She cared about getting what she wanted. I appreciate the apology, but fixing this will take more than words." The fallout was immediate. Laura later told me the family group chat was buzzing for hours after I left it. Relatives who had previously called me selfish were now quietly changing their tune. They'd seen Emma's true colors in her own words. But Emma wasn't going down without a fight. In the days that followed, she called family members one by one, spinning new stories. She claimed the screenshots were jokes, that I'd blown things out of proportion, and that her behavior was the result of wedding stress. This time, though, her excuses didn't land. And Jake stayed quiet for a while. When he finally called again, his tone was different, resigned, almost broken. "I've ended things with Emma," he said. "I couldn't stay with someone who would treat my family like that. I can't believe I let it get this far." I could hear the regret in his voice, but months of hurt don't vanish with one decision. "Jake, I'm glad you're seeing things clearly now, but you need to figure out why you let her manipulate you, and why you defended her even when the signs were there." He agreed quietly, and just like that, the storm that had been brewing for months finally started to break. After Jake ended things with Emma, I thought maybe she'd fade quietly into the background, and the whole nightmare would be over. But Emma wasn't the type to go quietly. According to Laura, she was still complaining to anyone who would listen. At one family event, one I deliberately skipped, Laura overheard her saying, "This whole thing is Mia's fault. If she'd just done the right thing, none of this would have happened." By the right thing, of course, she meant handing over my inheritance. Words started trickling back to me about her life unraveling. The high-end venue she'd booked for the wedding, canceled. The designer wedding dress she'd bragged about, returned. All the extravagant plans she'd been making, gone. Why? Because she'd been counting on me to fund them, and when that plan failed, her dream wedding collapsed like a house of cards. Eventually, she vanished from social media altogether. No more curated Instagram posts. No more smiling couple selfies. No more cryptic family drama updates. She stopped showing up to family gatherings entirely. Honestly, it was a relief. But her absence didn't erase the damage she'd caused. My parents, still reeling from everything, began reaching out to me more often. At first, I kept my guard up. Months of them siding with Emma over me had left deep cracks in my trust. Then one afternoon, my dad called. His voice was softer than I'd heard it in a long time. "Mia, we mishandled this. We should have supported you from the beginning." And then, the moment I never thought I'd hear, my mom, Emma's staunchest defender through it all, actually apologized. "I'm sorry, Mia. I should have believed you sooner. I let my desire to keep the peace blind me to what was really happening. It wasn't perfect. Their apology didn't erase the months of pressure and betrayal, but it was a start. From there, I started making changes. I cut off all contact with Emma completely, blocked her number, muted her name on every platform. I set firm boundaries with Jake and my parents. I told them that if they ever tried to pressure me over money again, I would walk away without looking back. Jake, now separated from Emma, apologized again, this time sincerely, without excuses. He admitted he was in therapy, trying to work through his tendency to let other people control his decisions. My parents, too, began to acknowledge the role they played in enabling the entire mess. They admitted they'd allowed their favoritism toward Jake to cloud their judgment, and that they'd been wrong to put keeping the peace ahead of doing what was right. Rebuilding trust is going to take time, but at least now it feels possible. This whole ordeal taught me something I never expected to learn from my own family. Boundaries are non-negotiable. Standing up for yourself will cost you, but it's worth it. You can love your family and still refuse to be used. For the first time, in what felt like forever, I could breathe. My relationships are healing. My life is moving forward. And most importantly, the future I've been building, the one I dreamed of when I first learned about the trust fund, is still mine. Emma is gone. The drama is over, and I'm free to focus on my happiness without someone constantly trying to chip away at it. It's been a wild, exhausting ride, but standing here now, I can say one thing with absolute certainty. I didn't lose, I survived, and I'll never let anyone take that away from me again.